Good evening. Hey, Mo.
Good evening. Hey, Nikki.
The doctor is in on a Tuesday night.
I love it. We are definitely in, and we are in with the continuing conversation on blackdoctor.org during the Cancer Awareness Summit. You cannot have a Cancer Awareness Summit and omit the topic of breast cancer. What's new, what's now, what's next? We got researchers, advocates, experts, nurses, breasties. This is jam packed. Let's hit it.
In fact, I look at this great screen we have. I'm so excited to have all of my breasties and friends and our new doctor, baby Dr. Candace. So let's get started. I think that, we talk about breast cancer all the time on Wednesdays, and we're hoping that we have some viewers that don't usually come on Wednesdays and just want to learn about breast cancer because it is really, the most fatal disease for Black women right now relative to white women. And we're getting it younger, we're getting it at later stages. And I don't want anyone to die of breast cancer, but we deserve mortality rate parity. And we have much work to do for what we call Black breast cancer. And Black breast cancer is a different disease. It's not the same breast cancer that white women get. And we now have this growing body of research that's validating that a Black breast cancer cell looks different from a white one. So I'm so happy that we have all of these lovely, lovely, beautiful women on the screen who can share their stories and talk about what was different about their disease, what they had to deal with to basically survive this disease. And we have a couple of us in treatment, and can talk about what's happening right now with treatment. We have Latoya, who's in a clinical trial. We'll talk about that, but why don't we go kind of do round robin and everybody introduce yourself, and I'll just kind of go around the screen and call you guys out. So just give a little blurb on what cancer you have, how long you've been a survivor, what you're dealing with, and let's get started. So Denny, so great to see you.
Great to be seen. I'm Denny, and I was diagnosed in September of 2020, and I had phase 3 breast cancer that was supposedly initially localized into one area, but after a second and then a third opinion, realized that it was satellited in multiple areas on both breasts. So I ended up with a double mastectomy.
And you're doing good.
Doing great.
Doing great. You did chemo too after that? And did you do radiation too?
Yeah. I did chemo, yep. And which I initially was told I would not have to do, but ended up after cancer screenings after the surgery, when they looked at the tumors, realized that I really did need to have the chemotherapy as well.
Mm-hmm. Val Blackwell. We call her Val B. Right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Valerie Blackwell. I'm a stage 2B triple negative breast cancer survivor. February of 2023, I will be a 5-year survivor. I was originally diagnosed in I was away on vacation and I found a lump in my left breast. So I went down to the called my breast doctor, and I was went into her office for some scans and was notified 3 or 4 days later that I was positive for breast cancer. So I went through the standard of care. I went through scans, MRIs, and I had a double mastectomy. I had a double mastectomy with expanders, and I had radiation, chemo. I had Taxotere and what was it? Cytoxan, I believe I had, and
Cytoxan.
Yeah, Cytoxan.
I had that Cytoxan. Too.
And I had after that I took a 6-month lapse, and I had a DFLAP reconstruction surgery, and I'm just thriving now, just to make sure that no one else in my family or my sisters or my brothers or anyone is affected by breast cancer.
You go, girl. Val's the one I call when I need to help talk somebody off the ledge. and she's our savior to talk new breasties off the ledge. Like I'm like texting her, Val, can you hook us up? We need this breastie needs some love, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, because you look like my family members. You look like my aunties, you know. And I think when people hear your story, it helps it to resonate. And I put in the chat, you know, we're going to take questions from everybody, but how many of you actually knew that there were different types of breast cancer, right? So we'll circle back to that and do a poll because I think that's a good place to start. But Val, thank you for sharing that. And you know, you said a lot of big words there with those different types of chemotherapy. There's so many types, but you made it through and you make it look good, girl.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And it's true, Dr. Mo, not too many, because I didn't know that there was different types of breast cancer. Because when the doctor told me I had triple negative breast cancer, I was so happy.
Me too. I was like, that doesn't sound so bad, right?
I was really happy because it didn't sound so bad, triple negative. But when I went home and really read what was triple negative, this aggressive breast cancer that African American woman that is being diagnosed with, my whole demeanor, everything changed instantly.
It was scary, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Tancherelle.
Hi, everybody. How are you? So I am currently still on my journey. I was diagnosed in February of 2022. We're currently in this year. And it was devastating for me. I went in for my first mammogram, and that is how I found out. And I was disturbed. I challenged my the doctor who came in, who reviewed my ultrasound with me. I'm like, there's no way you can know from a picture. And of course, he's like, I've been doing this for a long time, I know. And I asked for the biopsy immediately. And then, you know, they were able to confirm that I was positive for breast cancer. I am currently about 3 treatments away from finishing radiation. I had to do the double mastectomy. Mine was locally advanced in my left breast. I was PR and progesterone and estrogen positive. So it was, you know, like they said that if you had to get it, you know, like that was, you know, a good one because it's hormone driven. But I'm like, how do you control the hormones, right? I'm trying to figure that part out. I'm like, I'm hormonal just mentally. So I'm like, I don't get it, but I'm still making sense of it. I'm pushing and telling myself every day that, you know, it'll be over soon. And then I can just focus on living because my life is centered around doctor's appointments. So I did chemo, currently on radiation, and I did the double mastectomy. I have the expanders in. I'm sure Val can relate. They are the most uncomfortable things ever. I'm glad they put saline in them though, because that feels way better than the air.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so tissue expanders, for people who don't know, is basically what they put into your chest that prepares you for getting implants. And it's like they put these, I don't know, these contraptions in your chest when they cut your boobs off, and then literally every 2 weeks they blow them up with saline so you can make them as big as you want. And then when you have your plastic surgery, they take those out and put the fake boobs in. Is that a good description?
You know, you used to wake up with nothing or with these sort of discs that were in there. Now we fill them up with air, and then we take the air out and we put the saline in. But, you know, for as comfortable as they try to make them seem, there's nothing comfortable about having something foreign under your skin sitting on your muscle. But yeah, that's a good explanation.
My daughters call them cones. They're like, they feel like cones. They're hard.
They are. They do.
I was told that they keep the shape of the breast, Dr. Mo.
Yeah, and Dr. Candace, I want to pull you in. You can weigh in too and talk about the reasons why we do tissue expanders instead of going direct to implant all the time. But like, what's the benefit of having that expansion?
So typically we do tissue expanders instead of placing things in all at once for a few different reasons. Sometimes, so the main thing is to hold the shape of the breast envelope, and then to prepare the skin and the tissue underneath the skin, the small layer of fat underneath that your surgeons left for the implant or the deep flap or whatever sort of flap you may get in the future. And then additionally, sometimes after just having a bilateral mastectomy or a double mastectomy, there can be a lot of trauma to that tissue. So if you go ahead and place a large object like an implant or or a flap right there, then there's a chance that the tissue may not survive. So sometimes your surgeon may decide to do that in preparation for that. In addition to that, the surgeon can opt to do that depending on the type of treatment that you may have later on, such as radiation therapy. Sometimes it's better to wait until after radiation to have reconstruction. So there are a few different nuanced reasons why your surgeon may recommend you getting a tissue expander before having direct implant or a flap reconstruction.
Wow, awesome. And that was Dr. Candace, our brand new baby breast surgical oncologist at Stanford. So proud of her and so glad to have her here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Latoya.
Hey y'all, how y'all doing?
That was Toya.
Thanks for having me. I'll make it real quick as far as my intro. I'm Latoya. I am a wife and mom. I'm also shout out to the emergency medicine people. I'm a emergency medicine PA, and but I'm here as a patient, and I was diagnosed with stage 3C triple negative breast cancer, invasive ductal carcinoma at the age of 36 years old on July 26, 2021. So just a year ago, no known family medical history. I went through, the standard of care. Well, not really standard of care because I didn't have all the immunotherapy offered to me initially. But I went through the neoadjuvant chemotherapy with ACT, followed by bilateral mastectomy with 26 lymph nodes removed. Then I underwent 6 weeks of radiation this year. And now I'm in the clinical trial and I'm receiving oral chemotherapy and IV immunotherapy. I didn't have the expanders placed in. I wish I did, but sometimes I wish I didn't. So it was advised against not having those expanders in at the time because of the radiation that I had to endure. And so because of all the other potential complications that could occur with having expanders in radiation, I just heard so many horror stories and saw so many horror stories. So my surgeons were just like, just have the reconstruction and we'll fix it all together. So I plan to have a dip flap next year. So here I am, still thriving.
Great, thanks. And we'll explain what a dip flap is too. That's basically getting boobs made out of your own body parts, which is really a good way to do it. So, and Val can talk to that because she had it, right?
Yes.
And then my partner in crime, Val, our co-founder of Touch, and really our fairy godmother.
Amen.
You're kind. So hello, everyone. I'm Valerie Worthy. I am a 23-year breast cancer survivor come December. I can't believe it. I was diagnosed at the age of 40, but I think I had this thing in my body at 39 because I just turned 40. I was treated with adriamycin, Cytoxan, and Taxol, which really is the standard for triple negative. So I had a little bit of estrogen, much, much more progesterone, but they treated me, I guess, systemically with the chemotherapy piece, but then I had 5 years of tamoxifen and then another 5 years of Arimidex. And so I guess I got treated both ways. Maybe some would consider overtreated, but I'm here and I'm so happy to be here. By trade, I am a registered nurse and I'm also a nurse navigator. So I see tons of patients, including breast cancer patients, who are terrified. And even after conversations with their oncologist, they don't remember even what their diagnosis is, much less what their treatment plan is. Yeah.
Awesome.
So true.
Awesome. Candace, you really didn't get to introduce yourself, but I think she's having a little, can you see her? There she is.
Okay, I'm having technical difficulties.
Are you okay?
Booted off of this.
Oh.
Hi, everyone. I'm Candace Thompson, Dr. Thompson. I'm a breast surgical oncologist at Stanford. I currently see patients mostly in the East Bay, so in the Oakland area as well as Pleasanton. And I'm teaming up with Ricky and her team at Touch to help bring seminars to the Oakland area to Black women in general, not just patients, but just Black women, to educate everyone about breast health and breast cancer. It's something that I think we really need to talk about, especially since, as we stated before, Black women are 2 times more likely to have breast cancer under the age of 35 and 3 times more likely to die of breast cancer under the age of 35, as well as higher mortality rates at any age. So I think it's really important that we're doing this, and thank you for inviting me to this show.
Thanks for being here. And I never really tell my story, but I'll tell it pretty quickly for people who don't know me. But I had stage 3A triple negative breast cancer, and I'm gonna let Dr. Mo explain that in just a minute. And I had a double mastectomy. I did 6 rounds of chemo, the same ones that Val talked about. I did 6 weeks of radiation, and I was told I was okay. And then 2 months later, I did a checkup, almost a year to the day of my diagnosis, and my doctor told me, okay, your cancer's now back on your chest wall. You have 5 spots on your chest wall. You're now metastatic. You have 2 years to live, so get your affairs in order. And I said, well, I can't really die right now. My baby daughter, Haley, was a sophomore at Dartmouth, and I said, I have to pay for her to go to school, so me and God need to work this out. I've advocated for myself. I found another doctor who had probably one of 5 in the country that were specializing in triple negative at the time. She put me on some experimental drugs, and I didn't die, and it's been 11 years. So I'm very blessed to be here. I know that God left me here to do this work, and I've been so blessed to have so many friends to get this, to start Touch and have the Dr. Is In happen every day with my partner in crime, Dr. Mo.
I'm Dr. Mo. I'm the partner in crime, and I'm so glad to be here. I'm a breast surgical oncologist like Dr. Candace. I direct a cancer program in Pennsylvania, and it's my personal and life's mission to spread this message and to be the bridge between the community and the medical community, because it is sorely needed. And that's why we do these shows. That's why we do this work, and it's why we get to partner with amazing advocates like Ricky and Touch and all the folks on this show. And it is a blessing and a privilege. I got a question for the panel. So someone in the chat said navigation is key. When you're newly diagnosed, how important is navigation? Like, what's a navigator and why does everybody need one?
Navigator.
So I'm probably going to say, someone's probably going to disagree with me, but I have to say this. That navigation was originally started by a doctor out of Harlem. And his whole thought was that African-American women are presenting, Dr. Friedman, Harold Freeman, African-American women were presenting at a later stage. And his thoughts were, let's find out who has a barrier, eliminate the barrier, and maybe people could go through successfully. So I say that because I'm not sure that every single person needs a navigator, but I do think we need to identify those people that need one. And when I say barrier, I mean transportation, childcare, health illiteracy. So how can you make an informed decision if you don't understand, what your diagnosis is? Fear will make people immobile. So I think there are major things that you would need a navigator for. But I think some people clearly do not need a navigator, such as me. I did not. If I did know the answer, I had the resources to get them. There's so many people that I meet that don't have resources, don't have the support, and we lose them. And so I will say this, not many African-American people have navigators. So when you're diagnosed, I always tell people to ask for the navigator, ask for the social worker.
It was started by a Black man to help address the disparity in how people access their treatment. I would argue slightly against you and say that even people who have the means don't always know how to access the resources. They don't know how to use their insurance and things. And I see a lot of patients, especially in my practice, who need financial navigation as well as general navigation. And I think that we have to allocate those resources smartly, though. You bring up a really, really good point, is that, that term navigation and the access to navigators has really been usurped a little bit by more mainstream folks that might not need it as much.
Absolutely.
And
Dr. Cancer Center too. Yeah.
And Dr. Mo, I didn't have a navigator and never was told about a navigator, but I thank God that during my diagnosis, I had my husband and daughter that was able to go into my appointments with me each and every day, because what I did not hear, they heard, and they was able to come back at home with me and go over everything that the doctor told me, because I didn't have anyone but my daughter and my husband and my sister.
Yeah, yeah. Before we go on, let's introduce Dr. Alexia. Hey, Dr. Alexia. Want to give a quick introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'm Dr. Alexia. I'm a full board certified infectious disease physician, a stage 3 breast cancer survivor thriver. I have a TALB2 gene mutation, and I am a breast cancer advocate. So proud and so happy to be working in this breast cancer space and to be able to partner with Ricky and Dr. Mo and all of our besties at Touch, and so happy to be a part of this necessary conversation.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. We kind of jumped ahead, kind of making a lot of assumptions about breast cancer that people know. So Mo, let's break it down a little bit. Let's talk about the types of breast cancer and kind of why Black breast cancer is different. And if you kind of give the lowdown on the types, maybe you and Val can talk about that, and then we can talk about why our breast cancer is different and deserves different treatment.
Okay, well, the nuts and bolts of it is that breast cancer starts from an abnormal cell. One abnormal cell that has mutated, the genes inside that cell have changed, and it decides that it's not going to die. It's going to keep growing. 1 turns to 2, 2 turns to 4, 4 turns to 1,000,000. You got 1,000,000 rogue cells that are now clumped and become a tumor. And they start in milk ducts, they start in milk globules in the breast, they start anywhere in the breast tissue. There are different types based on where they start, based on what's driving them to grow. So when we know what's driving them to grow, like your hormones, estrogen and progesterone, we can categorize those as hormone-positive breast cancers. When they're being driven by other things, more aggressive tumors like HER2, or when they're not being driven by anything at all that we know of, the drivers are unknown, that's called triple-negative breast cancer, when the cancer cells don't have any receptors on them. It's like having tolls on the turnpike or being in the easy pass lane. Our breasties who have triple negative aren't stopping to pay the toll. They're not using estrogen or progesterone. They're going right through. And that means their cancers are more aggressive. And we know that this is the type that Black women are more likely to get compared to white counterparts. We know that this is the kind that individuals who are younger, my young patients with breast cancer, are more likely to be triple negative. Those who have hereditary mutations, so mutations that they inherit from mom and dad, like Dr. Alexia mentioned, PALB2 is a hereditary mutation. They're more likely to be triple negative. They're more likely to be more aggressive. They have a higher rate of recurrence. So, Ricky, I'll pass the mic and pass the torch to one of the other doctors or back to you to talk about some of the statistics and why Black women, right? Why is it us? Why is it always us?
Why is it always us? Why is it always us? Dr. Candace, you want to chime in here? Or?
Sure. So that's a great question. Why is it always Black women? Why is it minority women? Why is it patients who have historically been disenfranchised? And honestly, we are still looking for the reason through our research. There's a lot of research going on looking at triple negative breast cancer in Black women and why it's more likely that Black women may die from triple negative breast cancer. There are different studies showing different things. Some show it's due to socioeconomic factors. Some show that it's not due to that. I think a lot of researchers think that there are some things that are probably missing, just like we recently found out about HER2 about 20 years ago or so. There's probably some other mutation within triple negative that we have not identified, that we don't have a target for yet. So that's why it's really important for us to get more information and get more data from these triple negative breast cancers and to try to see what sort of changes are at the microscopic level.
Yeah. Well, we know that Black women are getting triple negative at 3 times the rate of white women. And you know, we know our Dr. Melissa, one of our medical advisory board members, has been doing some work in Ghana and West Africa, where they found a gene called the Duffy gene that is not on the genetic panel that we test for, that could be driving triple negative in Black women. But we have so much more science to do. But I mean, the stats are pretty horrific for us. We have a 41% higher mortality rate. That means that for every 100 white women who die of breast cancer, 141 Black women die. We have a 39% higher recurrence rate than white women. So we're getting it back and getting recurrences. And triple negative is the only breast cancer that doesn't have a drug to prevent recurrence. And we get it at 3 times the rate of white women, which is crazy. And we know Black women under the age of 30 are getting breast cancer at 4 times the rate of white women. And you mentioned this earlier, Dr. Candace, Black women under 35 are getting it at twice the rate, dying at 3 times the rate. But overall, Black women under 50 die at twice the rate of white women. We're getting de novo breast cancer at a 58% higher rate, meaning we get diagnosed right at stage 4. And these statistics are crazy, crazy. And so it's a horrible disease. And until we do the work to get better drugs and get better science and advance the science, we're going to keep dying in these numbers. And I think, you know, we are all blessed because we're surviving this crazy disease and thriving with it. But I mean, that's why we're sort of focused on clinical trials, because we need better science. You know, we started when we trial.org, our movement to get more Black women to clinical trials a few months ago. And I'm proud to say we've signed up 5,000 Black women into clinical trial portals, but it's not enough. We have to do the research. We have to get the science, you know, available to us and including us so that we can do better work around this. So that's sort of
about, you know, our topic is what's now, what's new, what's next. So what's now are those statistics, those horrifying statistics that Ricky quoted. I mean, here it is 2022 and the numbers for us, when you look at the survival curves for breast cancer overall, the overall survival has gone up, right? But not so for Black women. The mortality for us continues to climb. So that's what's now. But let's talk about what's new. Can we talk a little bit about clinical trials and the experience of those of you who've been in a clinical trial? And then maybe some of the fears that people who might be watching me, you know, may be thinking about, well, I'm not doing that experiment, or, you know, I heard about trials, but I don't really know about that. So can we talk a little bit about clinical trials?
Yeah, I'm gonna preface it, but then I'm gonna let LaToya talk about it because she's in one. You know, what we learned from talking to Black breasties is that it's really kind of a fear of the unknown. I mean, we sort of think about Henrietta Lacks, we think about the syphilis study, that's all swirling around in our heads. But really what we're finding is that Black women just don't understand how a trial works. And we hear often that, oh my goodness, I'm going to get the sugar pill and die. Well, there is no sugar pill in cancer research. You're going to get a better standard of care. You're going to either get the standard of care drug that's already on the market that people are taking, and maybe something new on top of that, or something new altogether. And you're going to get a better level of care. But, you know, everything's been in a clinical trial that you put in your body. That Advil you took last week for a headache, that Tylenol you gave your baby for a fever, that heart medicine you gave your dog, and all of those things were in clinical trials. So the science is happening all around us. So we have to get the best science for our bodies. And if you are a Black woman with breast cancer under the age of 40, especially if you have triple negative, a clinical trial is your best treatment option. It's your best treatment. You're going to get the best care. You're going to get more attention from the care team. You're going to get more scans. You're going to know whether the drug is working for you or not. And you're going to be monitored more closely. So it really is the best quality of care we can get right now. So LaToya came to me a few months ago and said, you know, do you know what Keytruda is? And it's really one of the best drugs. One of the only two drugs we have for triple negative breast cancer. And her doctor didn't give it to her. He said it wasn't on his list. She was really cheated out of that. And so she, on her own, went to bat for herself and advocated to get into a clinical trial. I'm so proud of what she is doing to basically get the best care she can get. And she's in the trial right now. I'm so proud of you, my honey.
Thank you, Ricky. Yeah, as I stated, I didn't receive the latest and greatest medication for my disease, as that's what I say, because the same day that I was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, FDA had actually approved that drug for my disease. And as you know, as I mentioned, I'm ER. You know, I pop abscesses all day. I fix people's faces when they come in all cut up and everything, but I'm not an oncologist. And so it's my oncologist's job to know what is the latest and greatest medication for my disease, and it should be offered, especially when you know I have the most aggressive form of breast cancer at age 36 with 3 babies at home. And so now my experience with the trial, I was never offered a trial. So I think that yes, there is medical mistrust amongst, you know, the African American population, but we've already surveyed so many women and we know that, hey, we weren't never offered a trial. So the first step is offering us a trial,
Exactly.
educating us about the trial,
Amen. Amen.
Exactly. Amen.
so
Amen.
that we can make an informed decision if we want to be in the trial. When we are
Exactly.
being asked, do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you use drugs? Do you want to be part of a clinical trial? That should be the next question. And if you
Amen.
say no, then okay, I need to route you to a nurse navigator so they can educate you about what a clinical trial is. And so Black women aren't being valued and prioritized enough to even be considered for those trials for whatever, you know, systemic racial and biases that they may have, like, oh, she's not going to participate, or oh, this, or, you know, whatever it may be. No, that's, you have to offer it to me as anyone else. And so I had to fight and push to get into a clinical trial. And when I finally got there, you know, here at the university, I walk in and my PI is an African American woman. I mean, like, it just, I felt like I was at ease as soon as I saw her.
Thank God for that.
Thank God for that. And she's been fantastic. She broke down everything for me regarding the trial. She didn't care about my medical background. She broke it down for me like I was a toddler. And what people need to understand, like you said, Ricky, is that you're not just receiving a sugar pill. You're going that's no longer something is an element of a clinical trial. You're going to receive the standard of care plus more. So you're going to receive whatever the plus is, you're going to receive plus for your disease. And the reason why I needed to be in a clinical trial is because I have 3 little girls, ages 3, 5, and 7. I refuse for them to have this disease while I'm living and while I have breath in my body. So I value my Black body. My Black body needs to be studied. My Black biology needs to be studied globally, because we need to target this disease and we need to figure it out, what is causing it, so that my Black beautiful babies don't have to go through this. And so that's why.
Amen.
Why.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, my honey. Yeah, we gotta save it. And you know, you guys, everybody's trying to buy the iPhone 14, buy the Apple computer with the M1 chip, buy the Tesla. So we're buying science all around us, buying science, spending money on science all around us, or aspiring to, right? Why wouldn't you put the best science in your body? And that's what a clinical trial gives us the opportunity to do, to give yourself the best chance and give our babies the best chance.
I really appreciate Latoya's emphasizing that she fought for it.
Yeah.
I don't think many of us know that we have the opportunity, that we are able to fight to be in a trial. I'm a retired executive from the pharmaceutical industry, and I know, having even worked in medical research, looking at subjects, we are so underrepresented, if represented at all, in most all clinical trials. But I honestly did not even think to fight to be in a trial when I was diagnosed. And most of us, I think we take a negative stance, feeling we don't want to be guinea pigs again. But we need to be brave enough and courageous enough to say, hey, study me. And I just did not realize for myself, I guess I was just processing it emotionally and going through the process, that I didn't even know, because I also was not offered the opportunity for a trial.
Yeah. That's the problem, Denny. We're not being asked to participate in a trial, and we're often dismissed. We lost our dear friend Ada last week. She was 43. She went to the doctor at 38 and said, "My breast feels strange. Something's wrong." And the doctor said, "Oh, you probably have dense breasts," which we do have dense breasts. So get it. That's a whole other conference we have to have about 3D mammograms. But come back in a year, you'll be fine. She went back in a year and said, "I still feel something like's wrong with my breast." "Oh, you're going to have your first mammogram at 40 in a year. Just wait till then." So at 40, her first mammogram, she was diagnosed with stage 3 triple negative breast cancer. And that was she actually, her surgery, her mastectomy was one of the last surgeries that happened before the COVID shut down at the hospitals. 43, she's dead.
And Ricky, I agree with Denny because I was never offered a clinical trial. And also, I was at my doctor's office just last week. And when I went into the office, there was a brochure. They had several brochures in the office offering clinical trials now. But every woman that was on the front of the brochure was a white woman. And I asked my doctor, a clinical trial was never offered to me. But if you want to get more African Americans involved in clinical trials, that brochure should reflect a picture of someone that looked like me. And for me to walk in this office and all I see is clinical trial brochures with a white woman, it needs to be changed in the offices of doctors.
Yeah, that's what happened too, Ricky. Remember I sent you that picture?
Yeah, she sent me a picture. She actually took a picture at the hospital, and while she was there, and said to me, "Look at all these white people." But really, that's why we built When We Trial. So we have, if you go to whenwetrial.org and go to the video gallery, we have some amazing videos so you can see women that look like us. And all of our pronouns are we and us. So you can see breasties. It's for breasties, by breasties, about Black breasties, because we want you to be comfortable and understand how it works from our perspective, right? So
I want to go back to something Mo said about what's new and what have I seen in the last 20 plus years since being a survivor and being a nurse. The community now has embracing breast cancer a lot more than it did when I was diagnosed. Like no African American woman talked to me 23 years ago. The women that talked to me about breast cancer were white women. And then later on, few African American women whispered in my ear, I had that. They wouldn't even say the word cancer. But what I've noticed now in October, a lot of our faith-based communities have like Pink Sundays. And so that gives us opportunity to talk more about breast cancer. And for those that are of us that are survivors, we get an opportunity to share. And people say, "Oh, you don't look like whatever look like you have cancer looks like." But we get that opportunity to share. And when you're in a faith-based community, and Black folk, we are people of witness. So if we say it, we were diagnosed with breast cancer and we looking pretty good, people will believe that you don't die after the diagnosis. So that's what I'm liking. And the other new thing is, and I don't know a lot about it, but because more people are enrolled in clinical trials, now it's more genetic and genomic testing, which means we get a better fit. Like maybe I wear 7.5, but because it was no genetic testing or anything, I'm being a bit facetious. But now my shoe fits better because now with this genomic testing, it's more targeted to what I have, which is very reassuring, for African American women. The challenge is now we got to get our oncologists to order these tests for us, and it not just be for the privilege. And when I say privilege, I mean those with insurance that really get insurance where you don't have to pay a high copay. We got to get that genetic testing and genomic testing going, because I think that's one thing too. And I know your oncologist can speak to that more than I can, but I think that does make a difference in our lives.
So let's start with like what people need. Like if you have a lump in your breast and you feel something strange, and your body better than anybody else. And actually, right before we started, we were talking to Ellis about being the CEO of your own body, the CEO of your own health. What do, right? You go get a mammogram. You check your breasts, right? Regularly. Check your breasts Know your bodies. Stand in front of the mirror. Look at them. What color are they? What do they feel like? Know your body. Know your breath, so that if something does happen, you can tell to go to the doctor and then advocate for yourself and say something is wrong here. And also, when you
Yeah.
get your mammogram, you want to get a 3D mammogram. You know, Black women tend to have dense breasts, and one of the docs helped me out in explaining that. But you want to get a 3D mammogram, and if you are going to a place with a 2D mammogram, stop going there.
Yeah.
If you go to a place that only offers 3D mammograms, your insurance will have to cover it. But
Yeah.
get a 3D mammogram, and then if you need more diagnostic, treat or understanding, or what do you call that, diagnostic
Testing.
assessment and testing, try to get the best care you can. I have so many breasties that will tell me, I got the free mammogram, and then they told me to come back the next day, and I couldn't cover the cost of the MRI. And you can't stop there. You got to keep going. You got to figure it out, and we can try to help you do that.
So, and I want to say this, if someone does not have insurance, that should not stop them from getting a mammogram. There are so many programs, federal programs, a BSEP program that will help people to get mammograms, and further testing is needed. It will cover that. I find so many people in the community that will not get a mammogram because they don't have insurance. And then 2 or 3 years later, they present in the ED, with this tumor, and it's advanced. And if they had just known someone. So we got to get this information out in the communities, in the libraries, on buses. I don't care where it is, somewhere where our folk can see it and access this information. Because again, we're dying for lack of knowledge. We perish for lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
I really feel that Ricky's statement about self-advocacy is so key, because I know I had insurance, but when I went to get my mammogram, I had to fight for them to allow me to get it. And the great part for me was I had the support of my OBGYN, Dr. Lashana McIntosh, who happens to also be a good girlfriend and knows the history of the disease in my family, and had me doing the mammograms every 6 months. And when I was diagnosed, it was actually during the pandemic. I was premature in getting my next mammogram, and they were really standing against me going forward with it. And I had to even call her and say, what do I do? And she says, you insist that you get this mammogram, because I actually detected it myself. I found something myself. So self-advocacy is so critical, and we have to continue to educate our sisters and our brothers that if you feel something different, keep pressing.
I love that you brought that up, because we call those breast cancers that happen in between routine screening interval breast cancers, because it happens in the interval between the normal screening, and they can be more aggressive. I tell patients, when you go to the doctor and you have an issue, you got a lump, and that doctor does that exam and say, you got dense breast, see you later, right? Did they do any imaging? Does that doctor have x-ray vision? They got, the latest, I don't know if they made Google glasses that can see through breast yet, but until they do, you need to be finding out, and you need to challenge your doctor to say, well, is there a way that we can confirm this? That's not saying you're wrong, but what should I be looking for at home? Can we confirm this? Can we do some imaging? It costs us personally nothing to order that imaging. And I think it's so important that you ask your doctor for that. And to the person who said their doctor said a 2D ultrasound, 2D mammogram and ultrasound is just as good. Well, Black women tend to have up to 31% more breast density compared with white women. And 3D mammograms are better for looking at that density, because it goes layer by layer by layer through the breast. And so I would challenge that statement, and I would back on statement, and I would request the 3D mammogram. If your doctor says, well, 2D is just as good. Nobody looks at console TVs. Remember those big giant TVs my grandmother had? They were furniture, right? We all got flat screen TVs now, and plasma. We want the latest technology because the picture clarity is just that much better. And so, to that doctor, if somebody says that to you, you tell them there's something different about the 3D mammogram. It's better for dense breasts. It's more specific for my breast density. And so I just think you have to really be your own advocate. And it is okay to respectfully disagree with your doctor and say, can you show me, is that evidence based? Or can you show me where that is in the algorithm? Or, maybe I should ask for another opinion. Or what would you do if it was your loved one? What would you do if it was your wife or your daughter?
Right, right.
Right.
I agree with Dr. Gary. Just to point that out furthermore, if you have a doctor who, like in Latoya's case, who is not offering you the treatments that you think you should be offered, or who is just completely blowing off your concern about a new breast mass, you should definitely respectfully ask for a second opinion, ask to see a breast specialist. And you should be granted that, and that should be covered by insurance for the most part. And I think it's very important, like everyone has said, to advocate for yourself and to see a breast specialist, especially if you don't feel like you are getting the standard of care or that your concerns are not being addressed.
Wow. This is all so great and such great information. I want to kind of touch on two more topics before we run out of time. And the first one is you have to know her story. We're not talking to our families. It's like the secrets. What do you say, Mo? The secrets we're keeping are killing us. And you have to talk about all health with your families. Know her story on both sides, your mom's history and your dad's history. And most breast cancer is not hereditary, but if it is, you can act differently about it and treat it differently. And I think that we have to start having these conversations with our daughters, with our mamas, with our grandmamas, with our aunties, with our dads, and know who died of what. So when you're building your family tree, you should know who had high blood pressure, who had diabetes, who had whatever, so that you can know what you're up against and know what your risks are and get a risk assessment at an early age. So I don't know why Black people don't want to talk about health, but Thanksgiving is coming. And so this is my secret I do on Thanksgiving. I actually make I'm the cook. So I make everybody, we stand around to say grace, and everybody says what they're thankful for. But before you can eat my turkey, you have to say, what's your A1C? What's your blood pressure? Did you get your PSA exam? Did you get your mammogram? And they hated me when I first started this. And now okay, Ricky, whatever. But take those times when your families are together to talk about this stuff with them, because we got to put it on the table. We got to protect our babies. So that's one thing, if anyone wants to weigh in. The other thing, and Latoya kind of brought this up in the chat, is let's talk about the products we're putting into our bodies every day or on our hair and how they're affecting our health. You want to talk about that, Toya?
Well, I think that some people have, heard of the sister study and it probably been seeing advertisements from different law agencies now that, filing class action lawsuits against Dark and Lovely and Olive Oil and PCJ and Just For Me, all those perms that, when you go on the aisle, they have all Black faces on the boxes. And so these different chemicals and these relaxers have been targeted towards Black women because we have been, we have to be pressured into fitting into European standards and not wearing, our hair coily and curly as we should in its natural form. We have, we've been conditioned to think that we have to straighten our hair to fit in, to get this job, and just all the different the social standards that are not appropriate for Black women. And as we know, these things contain carcinogens. And why is that, more Black women, Black women are getting these very aggressive forms of breast cancer at young ages, such as myself. I know my mom put a perm in my hair when I was young. I didn't ask for it, but she did. And we have more and more information now that is showing that, okay, there's some linkage towards these chemicals and causing us to have these cancers at such an early age. So, from everything. So I just wanted to bring that out. you know.
Yeah, we did a show about this a couple weeks ago, right, Mo? And what the rule of thumb is when you read the label, if you see a number or you see a word you can't pronounce, don't buy it. Right. But
Aluminum, metals, you're right, things you can't pronounce. It should have been studied, I think, a long time ago. We focused quite a bit on food, on ingredients, on organic, right? But our hair care products, skin care products, our deodorants, all these things are still just left up to trust that the ingredients that it contains, or even sometimes when it says all natural, right? Just because it says all natural doesn't mean that those ingredients aren't necessarily toxins or carcinogens. So I think it's important for us to read the labels on everything we put in and on our bodies and really focus on, as to the best that we can, preventive practices, right? We know the things that help to reduce the risk of cancer also help to reduce the risk of diabetes, of heart disease, kidney disease, right? Some stuff that we can do. And I think we could talk about that a little bit too, because when you got a family history, right? When you have dents, right? If you had a breast cancer, how do you begin to take your peace back, right? How do you find some peace of mind and in that journey? Can we talk a little about that?
Oh, I would love to touch on that one.
go for it.
And before I jump into it, I'll share her story, right? Her story is that my grandmother died of very aggressive prostate cancer. And my dad had prostate cancer, even younger than his father had prostate cancer. And my mom's mom died of metastatic colon cancer, and her cousin had breast cancer, and her mother, and my grandmother had a hysterectomy for reasons that are unclear to us. And her mother died very young and possibly had a hysterectomy for unclear reasons as well. And, we only began to explore what was our additional family history of breast cancer or ovarian cancer or, uterine or endometrial cancer. But I was diagnosed with breast cancer at 37. And, then it was this very call family members and, well, did you know? And it's not a previous conversation. And it's not for cultural reasons, right? We don't talk our business. We don't tell our business in the streets. Children don't need to know. They need to stay in the kids' place, all these different things. But also for generations, we continue to have disparate healthcare. So sometimes a family member died of a cancer and the whole family is left with this false belief. Well, they opened them up and the cancer spread. No, the cancer was already there, was already spread, and there was nothing more they could do. But nobody gave us the privilege or the satisfaction of having a definitive tissue diagnosis. So there's our background and there's her story, right? But once I was diagnosed with breast cancer at 37, I overhauled my life, and I overhauled my life in the year and months leading up to my diagnosis, right? I first started to look at what was my risk, and I was obese early on when I understood that I was at increased risk for breast cancer due to finding lumps and having lumpectomies with really abnormal but not yet cancerous pathology. And so I began to eliminate things from my diet. And I think I did what we all did, right? Do the easy thing, get rid of pork, get rid of beef, get rid of dairy and, foods that are pro-inflammatory. I began to lose weight. I began to exercise, but I didn't consider so many other things that were toxic in my life, like hair products. I had already gone natural by this time, but still in the natural hair journey, how many hundreds or thousands of dollars do you spend on chemicals to try to tame your curls, to try to fit in a professional world, to try to make sure your hair is within dress code or legal or whatever the heck it is pre-Crown Act, right? So there's all of that. And then the skincare products, I continued just as I was with many of those things. And it wasn't until I had the cancer diagnosis that I began to look at, well, what am I putting on my skin? What, is going in my hair that may be contributing? So many different things, even further exploring food beyond being vegan or vegetarian, right? What really needs to be organic and when does it not matter? And trying to make a concerted effort to risk reduce, even moving forward in life beyond breast cancer, but also reminding myself that, like, if I, God forbid, had a recurrence, it doesn't mean that all of my risk reducing activities and behaviors were a failure, because there's so many other things in my life and in my health and in my well-being that I am protecting. So, when I think about Black women and we're talking about, what we're putting on our hair, what we're putting on our bodies, what we're putting in our bodies, I also want us to think, where do we live? What's available to us in our communities, right? Do we have parks that we can go exercise in? Is the air that we're breathing clean? Do we live somewhere where there's a lot of air pollution that can contribute to cancer? If everybody's driving through your neighborhood to get to work and get to their livelihood, and there's soot and smoke and brake pedal powder flying through the air, we think about that in terms of asthma and lung issues, but there's carcinogens in that stuff too. And this stuff is well documented, but not well studied, because it's us that's suffering the impact of that. So these are all things that we have to talk about. These are all things that we have to think about when we're voting. When these are things that we have to take to the politicians we elect and the people who are supposed to be standing up for us. It's gonna go well beyond hair and lotion and deodorant and what microplastics. Like, we could go on forever, and pesticides and list all of the things that are toxic to us. And that's not to scare us. It's just for us to take a stand for ourselves, manage the things that we can manage, eliminate the chemical exposures that we can knowingly eliminate and minimize and change right now. But we can't do that if we don't have conversations like this and even begin to become privy and aware of this stuff.
How about adding stress to those topics?
I was going to say that.
Stress.
Add stress to the list, right?
Dehydration,
About that.
not
Right.
sleeping enough,
Right.
doing the
Your
most.
piece is non-negotiable, is what we say.
Yeah.
It's
And people
non-negotiable.
get so mad at me, and I'll say it every time I speak. My breasties will be like, "You didn't give yourself breast cancer." Well, I know I didn't give myself breast cancer, but my lifestyle was such that it happened at 37 and not 57 or 60.
Yeah.
Because I never got enough sleep, and I started exercising too late, and I was under constant stress at home, stress at work, just stress. I know my little telomeres are short and mutated, because that's what she does to my body. I know my inflammation was high, and I have, my little autocorrect functions in my body don't work. So if I'm creating an environment or allowing an environment in my body that is going to damage my cells and damage my DNA, and my body does not have the ability to autocorrect and spell check, well, I have a problem. And now that I'm aware of that, I'm best believe I'm working on things.
Well, yeah, I can now feel stress at a cellular level in my body.
Yes, me too.
I learned.
Me too.
Well, you guys, it's been an hour. I hate that the time flies so fast when you're having fun, but you guys have just given a wealth of information. I'm so thankful and grateful for you. You know, I love you so much. And thank you, Ellis, for this opportunity to talk about cancer. We're going to talk more tomorrow. We're on every Wednesday. The doctor is in. Me and Mo chopping it up, talking about everything. And tomorrow we're going to talk about lobular breast cancer, another one that is not so great for us. But do the right thing by your body. We can't prevent it, but we can early detect it, and we can minimize our risk a little bit. But thank you guys so much. We have to do this again, Alice, because we ran out of time. So we have so much more to say, right, you guys? But watch our show. These guys are on all the time, and the doctor is in. Mo, what's your line?
Well, we hope it's been relatable and reliable and real. That's what we're here for on this earth, to share this news and this messaging. We talked about advocating for yourself, right? You got to do it. You got to check yourself, know your body, because you know it better than anybody. Get that imaging and stay on top of your health, because as Ricky always says, you're your own CEO. You're the CEO of your own health. So
Yeah.
we hope it's been real and helpful and useful to all of you. And the doctor is in tonight and every Wednesday night.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Bestie love.
Breasty love. Breasty love.